it's only if I've done a bad job that I need to worry that the final product is not going to be something uncomfortable.
Today, my guest is famous author Krishna Udayasankar. Welcome, Krishna.
Thank you.
So, Krishna is, let me just add in the beginning that I have known her right from the time when her first book came out, when she was working on it. So, it's a privilege. And Krishna is not just a writer, she's also an academic. She was a professor here, one of the management universities. And now she's into full-time writing. Am I right, Krishna?
Absolutely.
So, so how do you see yourself? Do you see yourself as an academic or do you see yourself as a writer? Has it sunk in yet?
No, I think I'm like, I still think of myself as an aspiring writer in many ways because...
Being modest?
No, it's true because it's like you never know whether your next book is going to be good enough from your perspective, good enough from the market's perspective. You're always thinking that there's something better you can do, so you just haven't done it. I think somewhere everyone's in pursuit of the great novel that they'll someday write, and yeah, so I'm like still searching for it. I don't know whether I'll ever get to it in my lifetime, but the whole thing feels like a journey, not like I'm a writer, I've arrived.
Cool. So, Krishna, tell me, let's go back a little bit, when was the first time when you thought that, hey, I think I want to be a writer?
I've been told apparently it was when I was somewhere around 3 or 4 years old.
Okay.
Yeah.
Wow.
As soon as I could read, I wanted to write. And when I was a kid, my standard response was I want to be either an astronaut or a writer. And both things I didn't think would happen. You grow up, you sort of do the things that are expected of you. I had a great time. I studied law, which I really enjoyed, and I was doing a lot of things I enjoyed. But somewhere I kind of reconciled myself to the fact that I'm not going to write. Or academic papers is the closest I'm going to get to writing.
Or legal briefs.
Yeah, so I was actually like, okay, I'm lucky, I get to work with language and I make a living out of it. And so it's fine. So, I thought I had reconciled myself to that. But somewhere during, after a few years into my academic career, and I thought I was doing all right, and I was like, I'm still not completely happy because I really, what's the point of writing something that 0.0001% of the world's population reads, and who does it really help? Who does it even affect? So somewhere I think quarter life crisis, midlife crisis, what one might call it, but that's when I realized that I think I have to start writing. And my first attempt was actually poetry, which I'm very bad at. And thankfully, I had a mentor who told me you're really bad at this, so why don't you go write something instead. That's how I ended up writing novels.
So which means that you first wanted to be a poet as a writer.
Yeah, even when I was young, when I used to write for the school magazine and stuff like that, I used to write poetry more than prose.
Very interesting.
But yeah. I think it's because I never thought of myself as having the patience to finish a long form narrative. And but I think somewhere along the way academia taught me that yes, I do have the patience to hold something long from start to end and see it through multiple revisions, see it through the precision that's needed and all of that. So I think in that sense, if I look at life's journey, I think everything happened to bring me to that moment when I started writing. So I have no regrets.
So, from the time when you realized that, okay, maybe poetry is not something that you want to pursue and you want to look at narrative storytelling, right? So, what did happen in the transition? And then you had your first novel out, which became a huge success. We'll talk more about that. What happened in between in reorienting yourself to the new craft?
I think what happened was, in fact, what eventually turned into my first novel was supposed to be a long form poem. And it was supposed to be satire. And I still have that. I still have almost like it's 60-70% done, and it was inspired by the Mahabharata, which we'll talk more about later. So I was taking a very caustic view of the whole proceedings. treating it like a corporation and
Right.
coming up with all sorts of the shareholders being unhappy and all of that. Except that at some point of time I realized I was getting into such a complex socio-political narrative that I couldn't do justice to it as a satire. And I think that's when I really became a writer. In the sense, till then I was like really wanting, or it was one of those dream kind of things. I still hadn't realized the seriousness of what it means to be a writer, the responsibility that comes with it. Because I think at that stage when I realized was that if I'm going to write this and people are going to read this, I have an obligation to tell a deeper story, present a point of view that has some depth to it. If I'm asking for your time and your energy to read what I'm writing down, then I better have something reasonable to say. And so that's when I shifted focus and I started talking about it completely from a socio-political perspective. And of course, it's still a good fantasy story. Don't let me not make it sound too serious. I think I'm incapable of writing very serious stuff in that sense. So
who knows? Maybe in future. But anyway, it's a different discussion.
I doubt it, but yeah. Thanks for the blessings.
Yeah. So yeah, that's very interesting, Krishna. The whole reorientation that you just talked about. Now let's go back to the result of that reorientation. Which was your first book, which is part of the Aryavarta Chronicles, right? Did I get it right?
Almost.
Aryavarta Chronicles.
Aryavarta.
Aryavarta Chronicles. Yes. Yes. Sounds very grand. So how did the idea start? Because I remember that was the very early time. A lot of the mythological books that became famous later on, right? I don't think they were there in the market. I had not heard about them. And then you were working on this thing silently, and then suddenly the whole thing exploded, right? And other writers also started writing in the similar zone. So how did you get a hang of it, and why did you think that you wanted to work on this idea?
See, I think the fact that it kind of exploded itself shows you that this is not just about one person coming up with an idea and then other people trying to do it. I think it's they like I think Victor Hugo said. I think it was Victor Hugo who said, "There's nothing so powerful as an idea." The time
Whose
for which
time
has
is
come.
Yeah.
So I think this is precisely what that showcases, that somewhere there was a need to reclaim culture and to be able to distance it from the many meanings that is being given to it, particularly in the current political climate of India. So I think there are a lot of people who grew up with that culture, and now they're trying to say, look, this is part of my culture, this is part of my heritage, but I am not comfortable with you making religion and then politics out of this. So if we are going to have these stories around, then can we please retell them or reconstruct them in a way that makes more sense to us, that is more empowering? Because I think, to me particularly, bringing in a feminist perspective was very, very important. To be able to say that, this, I can tell the story of, let's say, somebody like Draupadi, and she doesn't have to be, she can still be a strong woman. She doesn't have to be this oppressed woman or this, completely, I don't have to disempower her in order for her story to resonate. It can actually be the story of a very powerful person. And I can talk about class wars, I can talk about many other things which make sense to us today. And probably history did go down that way, a lot of the events, if you care to think of this as history or prehistory, and that mythology, these are actually stories of things that may have happened in some form or another,
right,
it's more likely that history did go down that route. And if you think this is completely fictional, this is completely mythology, then it is quite possible that you are still basing it on things that went on during those times. So history repeats itself.
Yeah.
And I'm rambling, but okay, I'm just going to keep going on.
No, so connected with that point is the idea of, which I have heard, in some of your conversations or literature festivals when you've talked about, is the concept of mytho-history. Right? So can you tell a little bit more about it? Because I think that your approach differentiates you from a lot of other writers who are writing in the same zone.
Because I've always, as far as these books have gone, I've always said I am not retelling mythology, but I'm reconstructing it. So I'm sort of operating from the premise that, okay, there is a seed story here, But that seed story has to be plausible from a very social and economic perspective. And very often that kind of plausibility means that you remove the convenience of having act of God as explanations for everything. And so when you take that out and everything becomes the act of human beings either operating individually or in groups, then you get a story of a time and of a struggle, a revolution, even personal stories of personal growth. But you don't get very convenient explanations for, okay, snap of the fingers and this was divinely ordained and that's why it all happened. That's actually a lot more interesting, those stories.
It is. Yeah. And like you said, more plausible in that sense. So that book came out and it became a huge success. So were you surprised with the success?
I was delighted with the success. I'm not sure about surprised. I mean, as arrogant as this sounds, no, I wasn't surprised. And not because I thought I'd written a great book, but I was writing about some great characters and I was telling a great story. That story has a power of its own, regardless of what I have brought or taken away from it. I still don't know whether I've brought more than I've taken away. I hope I have, but I don't know. But the story itself is so powerful and so resonates with individuals at so many different levels that I was like, there's no way this is not
it has
going
for
to
thousands
be.
of years,
Yeah, so it will work, that way. So yeah, I was confident in the power of the story, but I was definitely not expecting it from a personal point of view. That my book is going to be like this.
And what happened after that? I mean, did publishing and this huge success change you or change your life? What happened?
Not really. You still get up in the morning and have to walk your...
and you still kept teaching and going to classes?
You still make your coffee and that. And, because sometimes you look at the book on the shelf and you're like, hey, wow, I wrote that.
Yeah.
And that's both exciting and scary at the same time, because always the question that comes is, what next? I think my biggest fear till my second book came out was, what if I've given it my best already? I think that's still a fear I have, but what if I've given it my best already?
Yeah.
And everything that follows is just, trying to catch up. So it's both very exciting and scary at the same time to, see your books on a shelf.
Yeah, especially when you are writing a series, right? And you've announced it as a series, right? You publish it as well. So the expectations set by the first book, and then people waiting for the next one, right? So, like you said, there was some pressure in that sense. So how did you manage it, and how did you work on the second volume and the third volume?
I think it was very horrible to live with during those years. I look back, I think my family put up with a lot. I was very irresponsible, very self-indulgent throughout those. I can't say I'm much better now. I'm trying to be. But I think I went to the other extreme where I was like, writing is everything, and this is all I'm meant to do. But by the time I got to the third book and I started working on, I realized there's going to be a life beyond these 3 books. We say 3 books, but it's one story. So in a sense, it's just really one big book in that sense.
Right.
So it's only, I think, when I moved on to the next story that had nothing to do with the Chronicles, that I realized, okay, you know what, this doesn't stop today. This is going to go on. There's going to be another book and there's another book. So get your life together. Nothing is going to wait. That's when I also learned to scale back, and I think that's also when I sort of took the decision to be a full-time writer, because I was like, there's only so many things I can do, and if I don't give up on my day job, then it's my family that's going to suffer for it. So, well, they still suffer for it, but still, at least now I feel less guilty about it.
Okay, so that was great. So you had like 3 volumes, and are there any more books coming out of that?
There's a prequel.
Series?
There's a prequel.
Okay, so there is more to look forward to for the lovers of the series. And so after that, you went into a different genre, or is it the same genre? Immortal, which also became a very successful book. Tell us about that book. And how is it different from the Chronicles?
Immortal is completely fantasy fiction. I mean, it derives inspiration from Indian mythology, in the sense that, mythology has it that one of the characters of the Mahabharata was cursed to live forever. But that's where the sort of similarity ends, and with that character, and then the story goes on as, well, if that little bit of that magical fact were true, and this gentleman is still alive today, what might his story be? So from there on, it's completely fantasy fiction in that sense, and it's a very, it's a quest-based adventure kind of book, because I mean, I personally, that's the genre I love reading, science fiction and fantasy. And I think sooner or later I was going to end up writing more in that, because I said, and I mean, not only because alternate worlds are fun to live in, but I think they're a very powerful way of questioning the status quo. So it's one thing, where you take a story set in the past and it's de-linked time-wise from the current, but you use it to question the status quo. The other very powerful way to do it is to use the future, or to use an alternate reality where you still talk about things that are relevant, but can obviously aggravate them and aggrandize them to get at many complexities that you can't if you write it as a very real and
contemporary book. Yeah. So then that book happened, and great news which your followers would know about is that now it has been optioned for a film, feature film.
Yes.
So congratulations on that.
Thank you.
And tell us more about that. It's fantastic, because I think 10-15 years ago we could not have imagined that this kind of deals would happen, right? Number one, books were not that many that were being written here in India. I mean, there in India, we're sitting in Singapore. So, and then there was this flood of writing. But now the transition to screen was not happening that much, right? There was an odd maybe Jhumpal Lahiri that would be adopted, or a Mohsin Hamid book and all that. But now even the mainstream filmmakers are looking at material written by writers. So the first one, if I remember correctly, was option. The first one was Govinda, it was option, and then Immortal.
Yeah. So
tell us more about that. It was a very exciting phase.
So basically, Govinda was almost an accident of sorts, where when the book first came out, then one very fine day I got a Twitter message from the actress Sonam Kapoor saying she'd enjoyed the book. And I was like, oh, I was very startled. I was like, yeah, okay. And she's tweeted it, and hey, everybody, she's tweeting about my book, and I was very excited. And we exchanged a message or two after that, and that was it. And then after a while, she got in touch with me saying, are the rights to the 3 books available? I said, yes. She says, well, I'd like to buy them and then see how I can go about making them. So that happened. That was a very long process, but that happened, where she optioned the 3 books. And by then she'd already got into this thing of making movies from books, and she's, in fact, there's a movie that's coming out with Dulquer Salman sometime, I think next year, I'm not sure when it comes out, which is based on one of Anuja Chauhan's books. So I think she really she really wanted to work with books to be made into movies. So I think that was sort of my break into Bollywood, when the first deal for the 3 books happened. And very close on the heels, that was the time when Immortal released. And it had hardly been a couple of months since Immortal had released that I started receiving, I started getting interest in the second, in Immortal. And well, that was a very exciting period, because I had more than one person interested in Immortal. I was like, oh my god, what do I do? I have no clue. I'm completely not prepared for what is happening. And it's again this very mixed bag, because as writers, you always have a bit, what if they mess up my book? What if the movie is nothing like the book? And all these things which really shouldn't be such a big concern. You just trust in the creativity of other people the way you trust in yours, and you let it go. So yeah, then Immortal happened, and that's very exciting, and I think work is on in full swing on that, and let's see.
So what is are you also involved? So I'm asking this question because a lot of writers, or wannabe writers, would be inspired by your journey. So they would also like to know more about it. So as a writer, are you also involved in the scripting process, or advising the filmmakers, or how does a writer work with filmmakers when this kind of things happen?
See, one thing I've learned is that I have to know where my job ends and where somebody else's job begins. So I am involved in the scripting, I am involved in this concept, but I also realize that there are things that somebody else is better equipped to do. Now, I've personally always requested that the producer can at least be part of the process, because I think it's a great learning opportunity for me to see how those things are done. But like I said, if you are willing to respect somebody else's creativity instead of being very possessive, if you're willing to believe that the common intent everybody has is to bring the best possible outcome, then it's much easier to let go and say, you know what, that's a great idea and you should run with it, even if it isn't exactly how I might have wanted to do it. And that's the whole point. Otherwise, hey, I would be making movies myself and nobody would be watching it. But yeah, so it's a very interesting, exciting process. Because the way movie makers are looking at, they look at the material and they're looking at it so differently. I mean, you've been on both sides you are on both sides of the fence, so you know how it is. It's like, you look at that material and it's a completely different view. This doesn't work. Why doesn't it work? It's beautifully written. No, it doesn't work. It just doesn't translate well visually. Like, okay, now what do I do? My favorite part just went down the drain. But you realize that there is something stronger that has everybody's interest, and you try and work to deliver on that.
So you have to open to those kind of suggestions and changes, right?
Oh yes. I think anybody has
difficult to work with.
And I realized that if my story is good, then it'll hold its own ground. I shouldn't be worried. It's only if I've done a bad job that I need to worry that the final product is not going to be something I'm comfortable with. If I think I've done a good job, I've done my job telling the story in the most powerful way possible, then everything else is going to be incremental. It's not going to take away from the story that I'm creating.
Wonderful, that's a great lesson. And so what next for Krishna Udayasankar?
What next? Next book?
Next book?
Keep your head down and write. We're looking at November or December this year. And this is again going to be fantasy fiction. Myth-inspired, but when I say myth-inspired, it's again just a seed idea, and I've completely run with it in different directions. So that's December.
It's great, we look forward to reading it. I mean, is the name out or?
It's called Beast.
Beast! Okay. Immortal and now Beast. It's a great title, by the way.
Thank you.
So look forward to reading that. And before we close this, I would like to ask you, I don't know, this is in the weird experimental zone. Can you tell us one incident or anecdote about your writerly life? Some message or something that has happened with you as a writer, which was very exciting or very interesting or very weird according to you.
Oh wow, there've been quite a few of those actually.
Anything you'd like to share?
Well, I think one of the best or nicest things that has happened is that somebody who began as a reader is now one of my closest friends. She's a writer in her own right and writes some amazing stuff. And we first began our communication and correspondence when she randomly chanced upon the book and she liked it enough to say, hey, nice book. It's been 6 years, and today we actually work together on many things. I mean, I'm contributing to an anthology that she's editing, and I think the point I'm trying to get at is that writing has helped me build great friendships, whether it's with readers or other writers or just other people. The connectivity that I've got just out of being willing to put myself and my words out there has been amazing, and I think that's the best part of being a writer.
That's great and so sweet. So, Krishna, thank you very much for talking with us.
Thank you.
And I wish you ever more success with more and more books and film adaptations.
Thank you so much. It's been a pleasure to be here.
Thank you
very much.